Well, it's certainly been a very, very eventful time, of course, in number 10. I'm doing this on the 6th. It's coming up to 10:30. And as of this moment, Boris Johnson is still in power. Of course, that could all change. Like I say, we've got PMQs coming up later. I'm sure that is going to be fun. um, but of course, the news and other events do keep on turning. And of course, we've got to cover those as well. So, you may remember just a couple of weeks back now that the ports or the port authorities, or at least the port operators, were in an absolute uproar. Why? Because Jacob Rees-Mogg had once again delayed imposing checks of goods coming in to the UK from the EU. And this absolutely infuriated the port operators because they have spent millions upon millions of pounds preparing for these checks for them to come in. They've hired staff, they've built new facilities, and now currently, because these checks have been waved away, because Jacob Rees-Mogg has delayed them on purpose because he knows full well that if he implements them, then it will cause even more chaos. And that chaos is ultimately going to be Brexit related, especially at a time where we are having all these other crises linking together, some of them very much exacerbated by Brexit. But the last thing he wants to do is do that and cause even more crisis, and people blame it on Brexit, hence why they have been delayed again. But the port operators are not happy. They've got all those facilities, all that staff that now have not only empty buildings, but staff with nothing to do. And they are angry. So we're going to go over what they've done really recently, because if you may remember, they were going to take the government to court. So before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button, as well as the YouTube subscription button, where if you subscribe to the channel that way, you get all sorts of little bells, badges, and whistles and emojis to use on YouTube. So over we go over today to The Independent with their story covering this. The title of Port Operators Demand Funding to Cover the White Elephant. That's what they've been called, the White Elephant Border Facility. The operators of the UK port have criticised the government for requiring it to create a £25 million White Elephant border facility, which stands unused after Brexit rules were postponed. And I really do heavily suspect these checks are just going to keep on getting pushed back and further, because it's been the same ever since we left. We've had the date. These are the dates where all these checks are going to come in, and we've just been steadily going forward to it. And in this case, we were a month out. We were just a month out from these checks coming in, and then along comes Jacob Rees-Mogg and just goes, nope, another year. I think this will just be a rolling thing until they think that they can sort of do it and sort of get away with the chaos. But they're not going to get away with the chaos because it's a permanent fixture now, these checks, and it will cause even more delays for importing goods from the EU. So anyway, it continues. The Portsmouth International Port said that it had to create the Border Control Posts, or the BCP, to handle these inspections on animal products, plant and forest products coming from the European Union. But after the government announced that physical checks on imports had been postponed until a new Target Operating Model, or TOM, is put in place at the end of 2023, the BCP at the Hampshire port has been left unneeded and unused. It had been expected to go into operation on July the 1st, operated by 67 members of port employees. The trading standards staff and government officials from the Department of Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs, or DEFRA, and the Animal Plant and Health Agency, ALPHA, will also have been required to check these consignments. In future, the TOM is expected to use technology to streamline the movement of cargo at UK borders, with physical inspectors required for high-risk products only. So this is part of what they call the high-tech border. But this is going to cause huge problems because already you are relying on technology where from day one, where they have tried to sort of put this in, saying, oh, it's all right, we can use these high-tech border solutions. Bear in mind, these are only for goods coming into the country. This TOM does not apply to the goods going from the UK over to Europe. Why? Because the EU has basically said, look, you need physical checks. You cannot rely on these digital tools and this technology to be able to, quote, streamline these processes, because a company, as we've laid this out before, could tell you they're putting anything in there, and if it's not deemed to be checked, well, it could just go sailing through. You have no idea, and you're trusting businesses to tell you the truth. But time and time again, there are numerous examples where businesses just do not tell the truth. So yeah, this is going to cause all kinds of fun and games where these come in. So Gerald Vernon Jackson, the Liberal Democrat leader of the Portsmouth City Council, which operates the port, called on the government to cover the authorities' 7.8 million shortfall from creating the facility, as well as the ongoing running costs. He said the most serious issue is the phenomenal cost the council has had to absorb. This is a highly specialised facility with limited use except for the purpose it was built. As a council, we have been left to foot the government's bill when budgets are already stretched. We followed their requirements, we made sure that it would meet their deadlines, and now we're faced with an empty BCP for the foreseeable future and are liable for over £7.8 million plus the running costs. We can't just turn the lights off and just absorb the costs. In order to know that the BPP will operate properly in the required time, we need to keep the facilities running to a degree to make sure it remains working. Richard Balliant, the British Ports Association chief executive, said that the BCP's facilities were built and the sites around the country were a costly white elephants. He said, our industry has built numerous border control posts and facilities at great cost and effort to both the public and private sector, and government is now suggesting these won't be needed. Most ports need to recoup these operating costs for their facilities, and this is traditionally done through levying of a charge on importers, which, of course, is not currently in operation. We therefore need the government to allocate resources and funding accordingly. Ministers have said that a revised regime not involving physical checks is being developed, so we need to discuss what these BCPs can be used for and if the government will be able to fund their modification or even removal to prevent them from being costly white elephants. It is understood that the government felt that postponement of these BCPs and the requirement was considered to be of national interest to prevent disruption to supply chains, and that discussions are underway to find an alternative use for the site. The Cabinet Office spokesperson said, we are always open to considering new ways to reuse the burdens for traders and ease the flow at the borders and cut the cost to help traders with the cost of living pressures. That's why the retaining import controls on EU goods will no longer be introduced this year, saving British businesses up to £1 billion in annual costs. Instead, traders will continue to move their goods from the EU to the GB as they do now. The port industry across the country supports our decision. We're currently working with ports, but it doesn't sound like it. We're currently working with ports, including the Portsmouth port, on an individual basis to assess the impact of the July import control decision and to address any issues of concern they may have. This includes seeking to identify ways of preventing unnecessary additional capital costs and minimizing ongoing costs. The BCP compromises and the temperature controlled chambers and the sterile areas to prevent cross-contaminations of plants and other products involving airlock quantity seals and areas. It measures around 4,400 meters and square and contains at least 40 loading bays, refrigerating examination rooms, separate draining facilities, biosecure detention areas, and even sealed floors and doors. So this is insane, the fact that this has gone on. But the idea that you can bring in these digital tools to check stuff. There's a reason why this is currently not in force in Europe, because they know you need physical checks. This whole idea of let's have a digital border is complete non-starter. If you're a smuggler, well, all I'm bringing into the country is, blankets made of, sheep's wool from, I don't know, Spain. And in reality, it's full of, illegal merchandise. But that's what you're telling the government you're bringing in, just those woolen blankets from Spain. That's what I'm bringing in. How do you check that? And it gets even worse. And you've got to consider that some of these border operating posts, as we've discussed before, are not actually there at the port. Some of them, they have to drive almost inland to get to these ports. So you could drive inland, be told, like, roll off, go to this place. You could drive to a different location, drop off your illegal goods, drive to that location. The port authorities check you. Yeah, no problems. Wave it on through. Go back, pick up your illegal goods, and then take them to where you're going to distribute them. There is a reason why you have to have physical checks. This idea that the government has of it's okay, we can do all this thing digitally, there is a reason why the EU refused this. And the idea that this streamlines the process, this helps, is a complete governmental fantasy. It will come out sooner or later that businesses, smugglers are abusing this system and bringing things into the country which they shouldn't be. It's only a matter of time, and this is the government's fault for doing this. You need physical checks at the border. You cannot digitize this away. It's absolutely foolish. It's a ludicrous fantasy, and the more and more they push this, the more and more they risk of dangerous products entering into the UK. And again, this is why it's a fantasy, because you cannot check a lorry or even a van that says, yeah, I have all these legal goods. How do you know? Without having to physically check, how do you know what that lorry or that van has just brought into the UK? So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, as well as the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there is the YouTube subscription button as well, where you get all sorts of badges, bells, and emojis when you subscribe to the channel that way, and you help support the channel that way. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.